Okay, I think now's about time to start. So I'll welcome myself again for everyone that's just joined. My name's Hamza, and I work as an account manager here at Amazon. And today I'm actually joined by Jonathan from VAT Global. Say hi, Jonathan.
Hi, everyone.
Perfect. So Jonathan will be on hand as the VAT expert to help answer your questions and provide a lot more context during the webinar. We're also lucky to be joined by Felix, Abby, and Kat, who work as account managers on the Pan-EU team here at Amazon. So they know a thing or two about that and what it means for your business too. So hopefully the objective of this webinar is for everyone to come away from it knowing what to do next. We want to try and demystify that on a Thursday morning for you, and we'll try our best to do that. If your question is quite niche, it's just specific to your business, we're going to try and answer them broadly so that everyone kind of takes value from it. But if you have niche questions, feel more than free to follow up with Jonathan from VAT Global afterwards. Okay? There's a lot of you on the call today, so don't worry, we will try and get around to all of your questions. Just be patient. Okay? All right, perfect. So let's get on with the webinar. Okay, perfect. Okay, so just a bit about the agenda today, guys. So we're going to be discussing the German VAT legislation, what it is and why it's important to your business. Then we're going to discuss a bit more about the compulsory tax certificate that you should all be getting, how to request that, what it is, and then how to upload that to Seller Central. Thirdly, we'll talk about the enforcement or the consequences of not uploading that tax certificate for your Amazon business in Germany. And then lastly, we're going to just give you a bit more information and open it up to Q&A at the end. So if you've got great questions, ask them in the chat. The ones that will be answered in the chat by Felix, Abby, and Kat, that will be throughout the webinar. But then we'll also hand it over to Jonathan at the end too. Okay. Perfect. All right. So let's begin with what is German VAT legislation. So I'll paraphrase this for you. So according to the amendments to the German VAT code, Amazon must obtain a tax certificate from sellers who are required to be tax registered in Germany. So you'll need to submit this declaration to Amazon if you are not obligated to be tax registered in Germany. So
Hamza, I just want to kind of jump in here and provide a bit of context for the sellers. To a lot of sellers, this seems like it's just kind of maybe come out of nowhere and there's a lot of pressure to provide these documentations, but a lot of this comes from VAT fraud that's been going on in Europe for the last couple of years, and it emerged especially in and around the e-commerce space. It's been very difficult for the tax officers who were very paper-based in the past to really handle this online selling and the movement of goods, and the reporting requirements was quite difficult. And I'd say majority of the tax officers have been looking at ways to try and combat this VAT fraud. Germany specifically being quite ahead of the other tax officers has led a lot of the other tax officers in implementing these new mechanisms to combat this fraud. One of these mechanisms is this F22 certificate, and it really just comes from thousands of sellers not being non-compliant and tax officers unable to go after individual sellers. It then moved to fulfillment houses. Now that applies to Amazon, eBay, any fulfillment house that has goods for sellers, that is ultimately fulfilling on their behalf, is now somewhat liable for the VAT that's unpaid. And that's really where this drive and push has come from. Germany being the first to implement this properly, will definitely not be the last, and there are other tax offices, call it inside the pan-EU 7 countries, that are going to follow suit. So I think understanding why this is happening in Germany and also what is going to happen on a practical level, sellers will be very aware as to what they're going to expect in the other pan-EU countries as well in the future.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks for the context there, Jonathan. Hopefully that's kind of given you guys the foundation, and then we're going to go on now into the 3 main things that can trigger VAT obligations in Germany. So the first one is if you store inventory and fulfill from Germany. So for any of you that are on the Pan-EU program, this applies to you because on the Pan-EU program, of course, your inventory is stored in the locale that you're selling goods. So that would be Germany as one of the members of that Pan-EU program. Secondly, if you ship goods to German customers from another EU country where your inventory is stored, so imagine you have a UK business, you're shipping goods to German customers when they purchase them, and your total sales exceed the VAT threshold of 100,000 euros per year across all sales channels. So that this isn't just doing 100,000 per year on Amazon. If you also had, say, your online business operating in Germany and the total sales was over 100,000, then you would be over that threshold. And then thirdly, you ship goods to German customers from a non-EU country and are the importer of record, or your carrier on your behalf is the importer of record. So that's not an exhaustive list, but those are the 3 main triggers of tax registration obligations. Perfect. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. If my presentation will work. Perfect. Okay, so how to request and upload a tax certificate. So sellers should submit an application to the German tax office that is responsible for the country where your business is legally established. Okay, so just to make this clear to everyone, even if you're not VAT obligated, you're not obligated to get VAT registered in Germany because you don't meet those 3 criteria, you still have to upload and you have to submit and upload a partially completed version of this application form that you see here. You should have received this application form in emails to you guys, informing you of this impending deadline and what the tax certificate is. So check your emails, but if not, people are on hand in the chat just showing you how to get it, how to download this form on Seller Central. There's an easy way to do it there, and we'll also include a link in the follow-up emails to all of you on how to get this form. But maybe Jonathan, you can provide a bit more context on what this form is.
Yeah, perfect. So this form is the actual F22 German tax certificate form. It is the 3rd form that you would actually need if you're getting VAT registered. So when you apply for a German VAT number, and I'm assuming all of the kind of people on this webinar are not based in Germany for their business. So you're applying for a foreign German tax number, and in that form you apply for a Steuernummer, which is a temporary VAT number. It's the first number that you are given. Once that number has been given or has been approved, it then moves into a new application process. You don't have to reapply. It's just happening in the background with the tax office, where eventually you then get your DE VAT number. Both your DE VAT number and your number need to be filled in on the F22, which is why this is the last form, and it's the form to basically just pull the 2 together. This form now, if you're not using a tax advisory firm, and like Hamza said, it's in your emails, it is a fairly straightforward form to fill in and submit, so you don't necessarily have to wait for your tax advisory firm to do it, although you can. I know that VAT Global does assist its sellers with this F22. I also know there are a lot of sellers that are in panic mode because it's not happening quickly enough, and I'm sure that applies to all the advisory firms. So you can go ahead and fill it in. This needs to be submitted to the German tax office if you are VAT registered, aka you have a Steuer number and a DE VAT number. If you don't meet the criteria for foreign VAT obligations, so you don't store goods in Germany or you don't have volume that's close to the 100,000 euro threshold, then what you're required to do is partially fill out this form and actually upload it into Seller Central, not the tax office. You can submit it to the tax office. What we've found so far is none of our clients have had responses from the tax office because they're not going to give you a form saying you don't need to be VAT registered. It is a double layer of security, so we're advising our sellers to fill in the form, upload it to Amazon or send it to Amazon, and then we're sending it to the tax office. The only responses we get are for sellers that have VAT numbers and need the F22. So if you do need a VAT number and you are VAT registered, then this is highly urgent. As the 1st of October, these things can take 4 or 5 weeks. There are delays. So you've still got about 6-7 weeks, I think, before the deadline comes in. But for those that don't need to be VAT registered, you can just fill in the form partially. So you wouldn't fill in, I think it would be point 4, confirmation whether you are already VAT registered. You wouldn't put in your tax ID because you wouldn't have one. You wouldn't put in the name and address of your tax advisor because you don't have one in Germany. And you wouldn't put in the name and address of a German-based authorized agent because you don't have one. Those would be filled in for sellers that have already applied for or have a German VAT number.
Perfect. Thanks for clearing that up, Jonathan. If you guys still have questions about that, don't worry. We're gonna get to your questions at the end. Just trying to make this as straightforward as possible because I know VAT can be complicated. Okay, perfect. So Jonathan spoke about submitting that to the tax office, but what you also have to do is upload it to your Seller Central account. So this is how you would do it on your Amazon Seller Central page. So you go to your Seller Central, you would go to account information, and then you would go to VAT information. This is where you normally see, where you see your VAT numbers. So you might have a UK one there as well. This is where you see all your VAT numbers, and then there'll be a drop down there where you can actually add the tax certificate. And this is how you would add it there. You would upload the file, give the expiration date, and then you would also include the tax identification number, the Steuer number. Jonathan, maybe you can give a bit more information on what that number is.
Yeah, so a Steuer number is really the first number that you're given from the German tax office. It takes a lot shorter for the tax office to give you this temporary number while they are just completing the process. It also means that the documentation that you've submitted is correct, in that they wouldn't give you a Steuer number if what you had submitted was incorrect. And it is there almost as a halfway point before you get your DE VAT number. So it's one of two numbers. You'll always have your Steuer number. It doesn't disappear once you get your DE VAT number. You'll still get your DE VAT number, but you are required to just go through this process. You get the Steuer number, which is your temporary. You then get a DE VAT number, and then it moves through to the F22, which you can eventually submit with both numbers on that form.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Jonathan. I was just having a quick skim of the chat as we went through there. So for anyone that's having connection issues, don't worry. There will be a recording sent out of this to you, and that will be a clear recording for all of you to rewatch this. And we'll also be sending out follow-up emails as well. So don't worry if you can't hear properly. Okay, perfect. So next, okay. So now we come on to point 4. So this is the enforcement, or the kind of What will happen if you don't abide by this this new tax legislation and the deadline of October the 1st, 2019? So selling partners that are legally established inside the EU, not providing a certificate by October the 1st, will be blocked from selling on Amazon DE, using FBA services in Germany, including Pan-EU, and shipping orders to German-based customers because your German tax certificate was not uploaded and verified by the deadline. So, Jonathan, you can give a bit more detail there.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in here and, you know, I don't really like selling fear, but at the same token, the German tax office has been very, very strict, and it has actually been going on for quite a while. I'm even sure there's quite a lot of sellers that have, on this webinar, that have either had their accounts shut down and opened, ultimately providing VAT numbers, or currently have accounts shut down. It's been going on for over a year. There was a stage where about 90, 100 accounts were being shut down a day, most of them non-EU based. With that being said, the German tax office is taking this very, very strictly. It's the start of a new process where online compliance sits at the heart of what they're doing. They want to remove this VAT fraud, and whether you are intentionally doing it or not, from the tax office's perspective, it's no longer an excuse. You have to have what they need or accounts will be shut down. There's no question. It may not happen to every seller, but there will be a large percentage of sellers that will have their German accounts shut down. And if you are trading in Germany as a market that there's value for you as a seller, I would highly recommend either reaching out to your existing tax advisor or to myself or to anyone that you're using to just begin this process of getting this form submitted to the tax office ASAP. And if you're not sure, reach out to whether it's tax advisor A, B, VAT Global, doesn't matter. Just make sure that you understand that this is absolutely crucial.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for that clarity there. And then just to follow on from that, from Jonathan's points, so what exactly will be blocked? The DE market, you're selling in the DE marketplace will be blocked, so all of your offers will be blocked, and you won't be able to inbound or outbound from German fulfillment centers, and of course you won't be able to make sales to German customers. Okay. Perfect. So this is where you should have received this email in your inboxes showing you, or just explaining what the new tax obligations are and how to apply for this tax certificate. What we will be doing is, if you've lost this email, don't worry about it. We will be giving clear instructions on how to download the application form, and then instructions on what to do next. So I can see a lot of questions buzzing off, and we're going to get to most of your questions now in the chat, in the Q&A. I can see a lot of you guys are very interested in this, so don't worry, we're going to try and get through to all of you now. Okay, perfect. So that brings us on nicely. So as I promised, that the presentation is not too long. We knew a lot of you guys would have questions, so we've taken that on board, and we want to leave a lot of time for them. So I can see them coming in very, very fast. So I'm just going to try and moderate a few of these for you and pass them over to you, Jonathan.
Perfect.
Okay. And Felix, feel free to ask them to Jonathan as well if you've seen any coming through that have been quite popular. So Sam asks, is the tax certificate and VAT number the same thing, or do we need to apply and get both?
So they're not the same thing. Your VAT number comes after you have a Steuer number, which is part of your VAT application. So in France, for example, you apply for a VAT number, you get a VAT number. It's the same thing in Germany. You apply for a VAT number. Once you have that VAT number, you take that VAT number and you put it onto the form that was shown to you 2 slides ago, and you then submit that form to the tax office. So it is an additional form that comes post once you have a VAT number. Germany it just so happens that you get given two numbers. The one is the Steuer number and the other is the DE VAT number. But it is an additional form.
Perfect. Just looking at the questions now, guys. A lot of them coming, so it's pretty hard to just eagle eye on one. Is the €100,000 threshold, is that in the financial year, calendar year, or on a rolling basis, Jonathan?
It's on a rolling basis.
Okay.
And I would go as far as to say that in years gone by, you could have almost got away with crossing the threshold and then VAT registering. I think today you would put yourself in a much better position if, when you're looking at your sales and you're projecting to cross the 100,000, to initiate getting VAT registered, because there are such delays at the tax office. It's not going to make a huge difference, but it will always ensure that you are fully compliant and the threat of shutdown never becomes an actual reality for you. And including the fact that there's a Steuer number, a VAT number, and this F22, you are looking at around a total of 6 weeks from when you fill in your first form for a VAT number. It can be quicker, it can be longer, there are delays. So almost be proactive, especially in Germany now, but I would say have that attitude with all of the countries, because I think the other countries will fall into line quite quickly.
Sure. Okay, so Jonathan, can you briefly explain again the step-by-step, literally from step A, on what I have to do if I'm obligated to get VAT registered? So I say I sell more than €100,000 of business in Germany. Can you give me the step-by-step on how I get that tax certificate and upload it successfully to Amazon, and also submit it to the German tax office?
Okay, so I just want to confirm this. The assumption is I'm not VAT registered here, but I need to be.
I'm not VAT registered in Germany, yes.
Okay, so you're not VAT registered in Germany, but you need to be. So the first thing would be to reach out to a tax advisory firm. It could be a local accountant, it could be a VAT Global, it could be one of quite a few. And ultimately, you're going to sign up with one of them. They're going to provide you with a certain list of documents that you need to collect and basically submit to the German tax office. These will be copy of your local VAT certificate, copy of your passport, articles of association, business documentation that you would need to actually submit hard copies to the German tax office. The German tax office would ultimately go through your, in inverted commas, VAT pack, which is all these documents. They would, if the documents were submitted correctly, they would issue you with a Steuer number, which is your temporary VAT number, whilst in the background they are continuing to process your application. You would then be issued with a DE VAT number. Once you have both numbers, you fill in this form that was on the webinar 2 slides ago again. It's asking you for your Steuer number, your DE VAT number, your tax advisor's address. You would fill in that form and submit that to the tax office. There are, in between that process, there are slightly different ways that companies work. For example, VAT Global will actually collect your documentation on your behalf and submit it to the tax office for you. Other firms may just assist you with collecting the documents and you submit it yourself. Either way, it's the same thing. The collection of documents to the tax office. Tax office will issue Steuer number, DE VAT number. Then it's on the seller to take those 2 numbers, fill in the F22 form and submit that to the tax office.
Perfect. Okay, thanks so much for that, Jonathan. And now, can you just explain explain, Lee asks, in the situation where I'm not VAT registered in Germany and I don't need to be, so I don't meet those three criteria that we spoke of before, so I don't need to be VAT registered, what do I have to do with regards to this tax certificate?
So that is actually where we spend the majority of our time trying to understand, because the way it looks is though everyone needs to submit this form, but the tax office has also said to us they're not issuing certificates for sellers that don't need certificates. So the safest bet at this point is to fill in the form without those four, I think there were 4 points that you can't fill in because you don't have a VAT number, you don't have a Steuer number, you don't have an address of a tax advisor in Germany, and you don't have a German-based authorized agent. Safest practice is to fill in the form without that information, upload this form, the F22 form, to Seller Central, where sellers are required to upload the F22. It's just you're not going to have it. And then at the same token, just submitting it to the tax office so that it is on file and it is on record. From the tax offices we've spoken to, right now they are not responding to F22 applications for sellers that don't need it. But again, to cover your bases, make sure you've uploaded something to Amazon which shows you don't need it and submitted it to the tax office so it is there should the mechanism come in at a later stage that they begin to issue blank certificates, you've at least submitted it to it. But it shouldn't be something that you shouldn't get a response. You shouldn't be expecting a response from the tax office because they're just not going to issue you with a form.
It's just to have it on record that you have submitted it and you have uploaded it to the Amazon Seller Central.
To Seller Central and then submitted it to the tax office. So both parties
to the tax office.
Some record.
Exactly. Okay, perfect. So that kind of clears it up. Everyone, even if you do not require to be, you don't have a VAT obligation in Germany, everyone should be at least partially filling out this form.
Correct.
Okay, perfect. I've still got loads of questions coming in. Adrian, how do you upload the form? So if we're going to send out a recording, but you basically come to Seller Central there, and that shows you how to upload it. But we'll also follow up with you on email as well to give you those steps. Okay. Screen, so seeing loads of questions.
Hi everyone, it's Felix here. I've just been answering some of the questions. We've got a question here from Gareth. Thanks very much. This is one directly for you, Jonathan. So Gareth has never used Pan-European FBA. At one point he was allowing stock to be stored across the different European fulfillment centers that Amazon has got for the benefit of receiving returns. Does this make them liable? And if they've since switched this feature off and are only storing in UK and have no intention of using this again, is the business still liable?
So returns do technically trigger that obligations because you are owning stock in a foreign country. It's more around what happens after you own the stock in the country. So did you resell the return or did the return come back? My assumption is often returns return back to the base, although there is an ownership trail. So from that perspective, generally you wouldn't need to VAT register where you had your returns. Considering the situation of the client that they don't want to go through this process anymore, they want to just store their goods in the UK and outbound from there, I wouldn't look at VAT registering in those foreign tax offices until you have comfortably seen that you made sales from the returns, because otherwise there's no real need to VAT register. So I would continue as you were. Don't worry about VAT registering in the countries where you had returns.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And another question, which is similar, from Paula. Is it possible to quit Pan-European Program and FBA in order to not need to upload a certificate? So if sellers have been selling and storing from Germany, is it possible for them to just turn Pan-European FBA off now? And will they not need to upload a certificate in that case?
So if you're no longer storing goods in Germany and you turn off Pan-EU FBA, the German tax office may very well view that as you still need to be VAT registered. And again, the benefits of Pan-EU definitely outweigh the need for an F22 form. So I don't know if it would make financial sense to turn off Pan-EU because you don't want to get an F22 form, which is just a single VAT application. At the same token, you did comfortably trigger VAT obligations in Germany, and you won't be able to sell on German Amazon FBA because there is an outstanding liability. So no, I would get the F22, and if you did turn off Pan-EU FBA, I would assume you wouldn't be able to continue to sell on Germany after October 1st.
And yeah, I've just shared the link to the external tax services promotion, which Amazon are running at the moment. So for anyone who is eligible, you can go to that link to see if you'll be able to work with a tax advisor to get fully compliant if you're on Pan-European FBA and you're not fully compliant at the moment.
Jonathan, I have another question for you. So this one's from Richard. So he just wants clarification. So if we store stock in Germany, we need to register regardless of the value sold, but would only need to submit returns to Germany once we hit that €100,000 threshold?
No. So yes to the first part, in that once you own stock in a foreign jurisdiction, Germany, no threshold applies. I own stock in that country and I have to be VAT registered. Once you become VAT registered, you then basically fall into the frequency of submission in that country. So Germany requires you to submit VAT returns monthly. And once you are VAT registered, call it on the 1st of October, you are required to submit VAT returns every month and account for German VAT from the stock that's in Germany immediately, regardless of threshold.
Perfect.
I've got a quick question which has come up a few times. So we're saying that there's some delays, obviously, at the tax office. If a seller does not get the VAT, the form in time for the 1st of October, do we know what the German kind of tax office is like, what their stance is on that, if it's kind of their fault because it's their delays?
It's very hard for me to speak on behalf of the tax office. I don't know how hard they're going to look at this. They may look at what has been submitted. They may extend it. I think Amazon might actually know a bit more in terms of this, just because you guys might be having discussions with the tax office, but it's really tough to say. There might be sellers that get shut down that submitted it. There might be sellers that don't get shut down that submitted it. I think it goes to the point of, if you have a VAT number or you are in process or thinking about registering, it's time to double down and just submit what you can and get the process going. Because if you do get shut down, you're at least in the process and your account can be opened quicker because you eventually get all of your stuff. So I do just think to really take it seriously and submit as quickly as possible. But in terms of how hard they're going to go, I would be lying if I told you I knew what the tax office would do.
Thank you.
Perfect. Another question here, Jonathan, from Emmanuel. He goes, how do I get this tax certificate that needs to be uploaded to Amazon? So I know we've mentioned it before, but just let's just repeat that one.
So if you are VAT registered, then the form Amazon will actually send you, and then you've just got to download that form and fill it out. I think if we go back one more slide or a slide forwards. Yep. So this would be the form that Amazon is actually going to send you, and it's fairly straightforward. If it was bigger, but I'm sure when guys look on their computers, it's a fairly straightforward form. You just got to fill in your name, your details, your VAT number, your Steuer number, the address of your tax advisor, whether that be VAT Global in Germany or one of the competitors or just a tax agent. Yep. And then really just submit this to the tax office. I think Amazon also provided the details of the different tax offices. I did see an email once go out. I don't know if it was part of this one, but there are multiple tax offices, and you just forward it to one of those tax offices.
Perfect. And Lee just wants a reminder of where do I access this F22 form?
So the F22 form, I think, is being provided by Amazon. But at the same token, if you are using VAT Global, for example, in Germany, we would provide you with the F22. I think we go as far as to fill it in on your behalf and just submit it.
Perfect. Michael asks, is there a form to get the Steuer number, and then how do I get that for that number?
So it's not necessarily a form for the Steuer number. It's part of your application when you apply for a DE VAT number. The Steuer number is the first number you get. So reach out to whatever tax advisory firm you're currently using, or VAT Global again, but it's part of the application for a German VAT number. It's not a separate application. You don't have to apply twice. You apply once for a DE VAT number. What comes first is a Steuer number, then the VAT number. Then this application form is filled in with those two numbers, and you then submit that to the tax office.
Perfect. So Victoria asks, can you confirm, do the sellers need to submit it to the tax office, or does Amazon do it on their behalf? So
sellers are required to submit this to the tax office, and then when they receive it back, upload the actual F22 form into Sellers Central.
Perfect.
I've just seen another one. So a couple of people have asked this as well. Is it possible for the sellers to get their DE VAT number themselves, or do they have to go through a tax advisor or a company?
They can use a local accountant, but as you see in kind of this F22 application form, it says name and address of a German-based authorized agent, required only for sellers not based in Germany or a member state. So if you are in the EU, you can apply for it yourself. It will be done in German, the whole process. You don't have to use an agent. I'd say the only real benefit of an agent, and especially when selling on Amazon, is you're most likely not stopping in Germany. You're going to eventually grow into other countries, and it's that eventual growth where you, unless you can handle 5 or 6 different languages, you want to use an agent. But no, you can do it yourself. If you speak German, you can get all the forms together and you can submit it to the German tax office. There's no fiscal rep required, so there's no reason why you can't do it yourself. It may take a bit longer, and it's not so clear online as to what forms you need and how to fill them in. Tax officers are also not very helpful in letting you know if you've submitted a VAT pack incorrectly. So you may wait a month, you don't get any word back from the tax office, then you phone them to find out where your application is and they just say it was rejected and you're not sure why. So there are benefits if you've done it before in a foreign country and you know how to do it and you can find the information. By all means, go ahead, but it does make it easier when using a firm just for those types of reasons.
Thank you. Got another one that's come up a couple of times. So for those sellers who don't actually meet any of the requirements at the moment, but maybe plan to in a future date, so maybe they plan to expand, or they might be doing pan-European, you know, in the not too far future, what will they need to do? Will they need to start getting registered kind of as soon as they can, as soon as they see it on the horizon? Because I understand that it will be a legal kind of requirement.
So technically speaking, you can VAT register once you've crossed a threshold or you have started Pan-EU. It's not advised because it creates a whole bunch of other practical implications. But if you, the strictness of the tax office and the direction that it's going and the speed that the tax offices are getting strict, best practice today and moving forwards is if you see you're going to cross thresholds, or your plan is Pan-EU, or your plan is FBA in Germany, consider that one of the first questions that you need to ask when expanding. How long is it going to take? What are the implications if I'm not VAT registered? And if you're asking that question before you make the action, you will most likely come to the conclusion that you need to initiate the process before you own goods or you cross the threshold. The time it's taking and the strictness of the tax officers is not going to be relaxed, and you'd rather just be fully compliant and avoid a lot of the confusion that comes with foreign VAT. So best rule or best practice is reach out to an expert to understand kind of the timelines, and do it by giving yourself a bit of time. Don't phone the week before you go Pan-EU, because you will be non-compliant for a period. Again, there are practical solutions, but there are also practical implications.
Perfect. A question here from Susan. So she asks, how do I go about finding or getting a tax agent? So Susan, Jonathan on the call from VAT Global is one of the partners of Amazon. So, you know, VAT Global could be a potential agent, tax agent for you. And we also have other partners that will also share in the follow-up email. And for people asking how do they get in touch with Jonathan, we will share his details on the follow-up emails to you all. Nick, yes. So the recording will be sent to you. So anything that you've missed, or if you just want to have a quick look at the Q&As again, that will all be shared for you.
Jonathan, as well, there's a few questions coming in asking the cost for VAT Global services. Would you be able to give an overview of?
So in terms of our services specifically just for Germany, we do have quite a unique solution. It's an online registrations portal. So it's actually just a web-based solution where you upload all your documents for registrations. Generally speaking, we charge 450 euros once off for the registration. That will include the Steuer number, the DE number, and the F22, as well as a very process-driven approach. It's a lot easier than email where things are in different languages and there's no images. And then generally we charge 150 euros per filing, and that includes extracting sales data from Amazon, running it through our compliance software, making sure that it's correct because there can be errors, and then an account manager to deal with the seller on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, depending on how many queries you have, and then actually submitting those VAT returns to the tax office each period or each submission, because they do change different countries. So we do also offer bulk discounts. So for someone that is going pan-EU, it's not the same as 450 euros per reg. There are discounts provided, and I'm more than happy to share that with any seller that wants to reach out to me after the webinar.
Another question as well, I think we kind of covered it a bit earlier, but a question from Dan. Do you think this will happen in UK, FR, ES and IT as well as Germany?
Again, it's very hard to say, but the German tax office, UK was actually first with this, with the due diligence fulfillment scheme. Germany came next at the beginning of the year with the new Finance Act. Our understanding is, yes, other tax offices are following suit. It really comes down to reducing European VAT fraud, especially in the online space. So assume yes. How it looks and how long it takes from the different tax offices may differ, but it will ultimately come to a similar thing. If you are doing certain activities and you're not VAT registered, tax offices will have the ability to shut down accounts.
And again, just as people are talking about costs, for those interested, I definitely recommend looking at the external tax services promotion within Seller Central. If you're in Seller Central now, you can just go to, on the search bar, type in external tax services promotion, and you can find the FAQs, the T's and C's there, and you can check your eligibility for that promotion with a contact request. So there's a link there which I will share in the chat now for everyone to speak to a tax advisor, and if you are eligible for that promotion, then you can speak to VAT Global directly and have the costs covered. Some of the costs covered, I should say, registration and filing for VAT.
Perfect, thanks for that, Felix. A question here from Philip, Jonathan. He asks, just for clarity again, I think we've covered it, but it'll be good to recover it. So this F22 form, is it completed after the actual VAT application has been done and the Steuer number has been issued?
Yes, it's the last. You actually need your Steuer number and your VAT number to fill in the form. So yes, it is post VAT number being issued, and you then as the seller are required to submit it to the tax office.
Perfect. And if the seller's working with a tax agent like yourself, will you submit it to the tax office on their behalf?
Yes. So that's one of our services, is that we go ahead and actually submit this on the seller's behalf. And if they are our service or our clients, again, it can take a bit of time because you're going through, you get the Steuer number, sellers are like, okay, now I want F22, and then the tax office is delayed, and there's not really much communication, but yes. And I think most tax advisors would do the same.
Perfect. Philip, yes, we will send you a link to the actual application form to apply for this tax certificate, but you should have also received it in an email from Amazon. But don't worry, we'll send it in the follow-up too.
I know we kind of already asked this, and I'm not sure if we know 100% the answer, but we've had lots of questions about if sellers have previously had stock in Germany but have taken it out quite recently, or they had PanEU activated maybe last year but it's not activated this year. Do we have any clarification at all on what the German tax office would kind of think of that, depending on how long ago it was that it was stored there?
So the thing is, if you don't have currently a taxable supply in Germany, and let's say you never crossed the threshold but you did go PanEU, right? So it was the owning of goods that triggered the VAT registration, and you turned that off, and you then only sold from the UK. You potentially leave yourself open to the tax office saying, okay, you did create a VAT liability, but currently you don't have one. So the potential does exist that the tax office may look at or do some type of audit and decide to then say, okay, we're not able to, or we're going to shut you down. It is unlikely. The potential consequence that the seller runs into is if PanEU, he turns on PanEU in a year, or he crosses the threshold at the end of this year, all of his liabilities from the past need to be paid up. So it's not that it doesn't just disappear, but there's also no way for the German tax office, because currently you don't create a liability. So let's say business takes off in Germany all of a sudden, and now you cross the threshold and you want to VAT register, the tax office may turn around and say, you were using PanEU for 2 years, you have to pay us the VAT that you accrued in that period before we'll give you a VAT number in Germany. So you may be helping yourself in the short run, but in terms of the long run, I'm not sure you do yourself the best service. But again, it depends on your business and where you see it growing as well. So just from a VAT perspective, it doesn't disappear, but it may not be something that the tax office can go after right now.
Thank you.
Perfect. A question here from Elizabeth is, so Elizabeth, she received an email from the German tax office on her application. The email stated that if no taxable sales are performed in Germany, registration is not possible. The certificate cannot be issued, so they can't issue her the tax certificate. So what should she do in this case? Should she just go ahead and upload the application form to Amazon and attach this email from the German tax office too?
So did you say it was Susan?
From Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. So Elizabeth's quite lucky in that she got a response, but that is what we would expect. So again, best practice here is fill out the application and just upload it to Seller Central so that there is documentation of some sort that you don't need to be VAT registered. Because again, like she said, there's no ways they can give you an F22 if you don't have the DE VAT number, because you don't need it. But something on Seller Central and some email to a tax office is safer than not sending it. Again, it's not a prerequisite and you don't have to send it to the tax office. But upload it on Amazon, yes. I would highly recommend doing that.
Perfect. Osama asks, so he sells less than 100,000 euros a year in Germany, and he is on the Pan-EU program. So Osama, so you should be VAT registered in Germany and all the other countries that are required for the Pan-EU program. But he asked, should I sign out of my Pan-EU and sell from the UK to other EU countries and Amazon if he isn't VAT registered?
Again, that's not a VAT query that I can answer, but I know that Amazon puts a huge amount of focus on this Pan-EU, and the benefits of Pan-EU are huge. I wouldn't turn off Pan-EU because I'm not VAT registered. I'm not sure that's the correct business decision. Again, it is your business, but getting a VAT registration is once. You get it once, and then you continue to basically trade across Europe, Prime, on five different Amazon platforms. I don't know if cancelling Pan-EU because you don't have an F22 or a VAT number makes the most sense. But again, I'm happy if you want to reach out and maybe there's more to the question and more to it. More than happy to see how I can assist.
Perfect. So Maurice asks, where should the form on Seller Central be submitted? So Maurice, the form should be submitted here. So this is how you upload your tax certificate. You come to Seller Central, account information, and then you go to your VAT information where you see all your VAT numbers. And that's where you would submit the tax certificate that you would have received from the German tax office if you were required to if you had VAT obligations and you're required to get that form, that certificate, sorry. Okay guys, so I'm just gonna keep the questions coming in. I'm just gonna launch a few polls just to kind of gauge how useful you found this webinar today, and hopefully you have found it useful, and see where everyone is with that. So I'm just going to launch this now. Perfect. So the options are very useful, not that useful, not useful at all. So if you want to just put in your responses, and don't worry, we're still going to have time for some more questions. Perfect. Just going to give that maybe another 10 seconds. Okay, perfect. And secondly, how good did you find the presenters today? So very good, good, okay, poor. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And then lastly, this is the last question, and then we'll maybe have time for a couple of more questions. So the last question I have for you guys is, oh, apologies. So do you know what to do regarding the German tax legislation now? So even if you don't know what to do you know where to go? So do you know where to go to follow up for more information with Jonathan or with a tax agent? great stuff. It's good to see a lot of you know what to do next. And that was the aim of this this webinar, really, is just to give you more clarity on what this legislation means for your business and how to action on it to ensure your business is not affected. Perfect. Okay, thanks so much, guys. So I'm just looking at the time now. We've got another 3 minutes. So let's see if we can squeeze in another couple of questions. If your question hasn't been answered, we will try and get back to all of them, well, the most popular ones, in an FAQ that we're going to send out in the follow-up email, and we'll also include Jonathan's details for follow-up with your niche questions. Felix or Kat, if you see any popular question, feel free to just ask it to Jonathan.
So one question here from Pranav: signed up with Avalara, but then never completed the process of getting VAT registered a few years ago. Can they now switch to VAT Global? Yep, absolutely. Again, I'd recommend checking you're eligible for the external VAT services promotion and speaking to one of our tax providers through that process and doing that.
Perfect. Julita asks, so she's based in the UK and VAT registered, and she's selling to Germany about 500 euros a year, so not too much. All her orders are fulfilled from the UK by Amazon. Is it okay to not apply for the German VAT number and just partially fill out the F22 form and submit that on Seller Central?
As long as she's not storing goods in Germany and it's just small volume from UK stock, that's exactly what she should do. If she does have stock in Germany, she needs to be VAT registered.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, do sellers need to be a limited company in order to register for the VAT in Germany? No.
Sellers need to have a local VAT number, which you can get as a sole trader, a private company, limited company, closed corporation. Type of company is not a determining factor.
Perfect. Okay, so maybe time for one last question, guys. If your question hasn't been answered, there's been a load of you asking questions today on the call. So apologies if it hasn't been answered, but we will be sending up follow-ups, and you should have a clear next step on how to get that answered if it hasn't been. So let's just try and find one last question.
From LG, which I can answer very quickly. If we've enabled Pan-European FBA and don't reach the 100,000 euro threshold, do we need to register for VAT? Yes, absolutely. If you're enabling Pan-European FBA, your products will be stored in other countries, so you have to be VAT registered in that case. And again, I'd recommend the external VAT services promotion in that case. Check to see if you're eligible.
Yep, good point, Felix. Apologies, I was on mute. So thanks a lot for that answer, Felix. So just to reiterate, these are the three main criteria that would trigger VAT obligations in Germany. So if you store inventory and fulfill from Germany, which you would be doing on the PAN-EU program, you ship goods to German customers and you are over that threshold of 100,000 a year, and or if you ship goods to German customers from a non-EU country and are in the importer of record. Okay, perfect. So hopefully that's given a lot of clarity to you guys. If you still have niggling questions, we will get back to those questions in the follow-ups that we're going to send, and hopefully this has given you a clear idea of what to do next and where to go to get any of the questions you have still burning on your mind, still get those answered. So I'd like to give a big thank you to Jonathan for joining us today from VAT Global.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Of course. Thanks for joining us. And thanks to Felix and Kat who have been trying their best to answer all of your questions coming in during the call. All right, perfect guys. So I'm going to end the webinar now, and hopefully we'll see you on another webinar soon.